that's so kind of like the misconception that the dentists have about the HR. So I really want to know, like, what is some of the misconception that you see in our industry about the HR stuff, and what is your advice to those dentists that have those misconceptions?
It's sometimes thought that it's provided by the payroll service, for one. That's one misconception. While payroll services do offer some level of a HR component, I mean, typically documents can come from the payroll service. They're happy to give those, but they're not all the documents that you need, right? So that's one misconception. Most payroll services also act on the federal level when it comes to laws, right? It's easy to understand federal law because it pertains to every state in the United States. But the challenge is that we run into state specific laws and sometimes down to the county and sometimes down to the city. So, depending upon where you're operating, really has a lot of challenges. If you're trying to do this on your own, you could be missing some critical elements and they could come back to bite you when you're not prepared, because that's when it always shows up, right? Like driving down the highway and you just happen to hit something and you weren't expecting it, and now you're on the side of the road and you have some delays. So we always like to make sure that we keep the conversation upbeat when we're talking about human resources, and we make a lot of recommendations just by doing a risk analysis, answering questions over the phone about what they're using with regard to an employee handbook or a timekeeping system, or how many documents they're using when they're onboarding an employee. So just general questions, we can get a good understanding about your foundation and then talk about areas that are exposed, because you want to avoid lawsuits. That's the main situation. And typically, a lawsuit or a challenge to policies or anything that you might have working in your practice, if you're found guilty or not being compliant, it could result in a two-time payout as a penalty based upon that employee's annual salary. So that could be pretty expensive. $80 to $100,000 written in a check is not the most convenient way of spending that money, especially when you're talking about a dental practice.
All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Dentments. Man, oh man, I was just telling Mr. Ray that the HR stuff has become a huge, huge topic in our industry. I was just having dinner a couple of days ago with a couple of dentists about HR, and I was like, man, who's better than Mr. Ray to bring on my podcast and talk about this giant of a topic? And Mr. Ray is an expert because Mr. Ray is a senior and HR consultant at HR for Health. I'm super excited to have Mr. Ray here. And they also have an event coming up October 23rd till October 25th in my kind of like my old hometown, because that's where I went to school in Utah. I spent 4 years in Salt Lake City, Mr. Ray. So you guys have an event over there. Everybody's going to have a good time. It's probably a lot of snow.
I'll remember to bring my jacket.
Yeah, I was going to be like, yeah, you want to get your jacket. Well, Mr. Ray, thank you so much for giving me your time. I know you are in the East Coast time. It's probably late for you, but I truly appreciate your time. I'm
I'm
going to
happy
kind
to
of
be here.
thank you so much. I know you've been super supportive of what we're doing with Dance Man, so I'm very grateful for that. We've been having a lot of conversation in the back about that. But I kind of wanted to allow you to introduce yourself, let the audience know who you are, what you do, and why you do it, and then we'll kind of get the questions rolling.
Sure. I'm located out on the East Coast in Pennsylvania, and I've been in healthcare since 1994. Most of my career, I've worked specifically in dentistry, so I do understand how practices operate, both on the clinical side and the administrative side. Don't ask me to come in and evaluate any conditions of your patients while they're in the operatory. My skill level is very superficial when it comes to clinical science, but I'm very attuned to administrative situations in the practice. So I'm happy to be here. And I do work for HR for Health, so I do have a significant amount of knowledge and can answer as many questions as you have for me.
Yeah, Mr. Ray, thank you so much. I think that, as we discussed before, I think the HR stuff is such an important thing in our industry. I think in any industry, but I believe in dentistry more than before is becoming such a big topic. Like I mentioned, I had a dinner with a couple of dentists that were like, man, we have nothing in place for our HR to kind of help us and guide us through things. They don't even have a handbook essentially. They have no idea what's going on besides paper that they print out from Chat GPT and they had their employees sign it. That's about all they have for their
Oh,
office.
no. No.
Well, Mr. Ray, the first question I have for you is that, that's so kind of like the misconception that the dentists have about the HR. So I really want to know, like, what is some of the misconception that you see in our industry about the HR stuff? And what is your advice to those dentists that have those misconceptions?
It's sometimes thought that it's provided by the payroll service, for one. That's one misconception. While payroll services do offer some level of a HR component, I mean, typically documents can come from the payroll service. They're happy to give those, but they're not all the documents that you need, right? So that's one misconception. Most payroll services also act on the federal level when it comes to laws, right? It's easy to understand federal law because it pertains to every state in the United States. But the challenge is that we run into state specific laws and sometimes down to the county and sometimes down to the city. So, depending upon where you're operating, really has a lot of challenges. If you're trying to do this on your own, you could be missing some critical elements and they could come back to bite you when you're not prepared, because that's when it always shows up, right? Like driving down the highway and you just happen to hit something and you weren't expecting it, and now you're on the side of the road and you have some delays. So we always like to make sure that we keep the conversation upbeat when we're talking about human resources, and we make a lot of recommendations just by doing a risk analysis, answering questions over the phone about what they're using with regard to an employee handbook or a timekeeping system, or how many documents they're using when they're onboarding an employee. So just general questions, we can get a good understanding about your foundation and then talk about areas that are exposed, because you want to avoid lawsuits. That's the main situation. And typically, a lawsuit or a challenge to policies or anything that you might have working in your practice, if you're found guilty or not being compliant, it could result in a two-time payout as a penalty based upon that employee's annual salary. So that could be pretty expensive. $80 to $100,000 written in a check is not the most convenient way of spending that money, especially when you're talking about a dental practice. So these are some of the challenges that a lot of practitioners don't understand that they could be a victim of. And it's just simply understanding that the foundation needs to be in place, and then you really don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. The one of the conversation that I had with a friend of mine also was that why is having the employee handbook is such an important thing, because that's something that I think they don't really understand why the employee handbook matters. They just like I said, some of them are like, oh, let's just chat GPT it and that's it, right? But just what are the detail or specific information that are in that employee handbook that is such a key thing in your operational in your business that
Right.
you guys are keep touching on that, because that's the important part of that.
Yeah, and the very simple answer is that the employee handbook behaves as your communication piece to everything that is happening with the business. Then it also discusses requirements that the federal government make you disclose to employees, same as your state government, right? So there are particular legal items that are required by law that, unless you're an attorney, you wouldn't know they need to be delivered within that device, which is the employee handbook. Now that's the legal side of it. So sometimes when I talk to clients on the phone, when I'm having a consultation, I talk about the handbook having two personalities. We have the legal side of the handbook, and then we have the benefit side of the handbook. This is where the practitioner has the ability to stand out against the competition. So if many of your listeners haven't noticed, we're still short on hygienists and assistants all around the country. The business has not been able to keep up since COVID, right? Because the schools just don't have the ability to turn a lot of these individuals out fast enough. Then you have those that are now in the marketplace, right? And they don't have enough experience. And those that do have experience could be looking for better opportunities. And then you, as a business owner, have to look at your competition, right? Because dentistry, whether we want to believe it or not, it is a competitive atmosphere, right? And you compete based upon what you do and how you communicate, how you're providing dentistry in your community. And then you also have employees that may be looking for a newer opportunity. Maybe they want to work in a clinic that has high end devices, maybe CEREC offices, or the dentists are doing more implant or all on four procedures, et cetera. So that's one mechanism in your communication. And they see that through marketing, they see that through your website, right? But when it comes down to the basic benefits, do you provide vacation time? Do you know what the sick time requirements are if you have them in your state? Are you required to provide vacation time in your state, or is it just a benefit, right? Does everyone understand what the clause, the at will employment item, what that means? It doesn't mean, it's one of the biggest misnomers, because it doesn't mean that you can fire anybody whenever you want, right? The basics of an at-will clause is that I'm the business owner. I can hire my employees and I can release my employees. And as an employee, I can choose to work for you or I can choose to give notice and leave. That's basically that will. So no one, it's not a slave state, right? The business owner cannot control you. But within the federal law and state laws, there are specific rules for how you employ individuals and what the guidelines are. And if you do things incorrectly, that's when it could come back and bite you, right? So there's a lot of synergies that all come out of the employee handbook. But going back to what I was saying earlier, the benefit structure. Why are you my choice? What is it about this interview process, the questions that I'm answering? Why should I devote my skill and my time to you, doctor? And then these are where you disclose some of that information.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, the fact that there are so much that goes into it without even us thinking about the legality of it, as far as like, hey, like these are the things that we have to pay attention to. Like I mentioned, the one thing I love is that these are the things that they never talk to us about in dental school. When we're in dental school, they don't tell you, hey, like you need XYZ of a system in place in order for you to be able to track, your employment and things. And this is why I love these conversations I have on my podcast. The
Oh,
next thing is like when I kind of done some research about HR for health. What I really want to know is that at what point in the business or in the dentist journey do you guys like kind of step in to help them? And when you guys want to help them, how do you guys start that conversation? Say, hey, this is what we can do, this is how we analyze your business, and these are the steps that we help you with to get you there. So how's that process is looking like? And I kind of want to know, like, when do you guys step in to help that dentist kind of make them feel better about their HR?
it's a great question, and it sounds like you've got three different answers within that one question. So when do we, right? The first place is that if any of your listeners are in the midst of purchasing a practice or building out a brand new space, that's when you need to start thinking about the HR component of your practice, right? That's the thinking process. Within that, before you take occupancy of either the closing date of an existing practice or you've got the keys and you're ready and the machines are ready to go and you're ready to treat your first patient, 2 months before you take control of that practice, either way, you want to have the beginnings of your human resource put together, right? You want to have a handbook in place before you hire employees or you assume existing employees. You want to ask questions if you're acquiring a practice from the previous owner. Part of your discovery should be his or her employee handbook. If they don't have a handbook, you don't want to pay attention to what they don't have, but you want to get information about what they're providing from benefits for their employees. Do they have sick time? Do they have PTO, or do they provide a week off because they shut down their practice specifically the third week of July, and that's when everyone takes their vacation because the provider is giving that to them as a benefit, right? So there's a lot of different ways to structure everything, but prior to taking ownership as a new owner, you want to have this information available so you can decide what you can transfer or grandfather over into your employee handbook, your business. And if it's a brand new startup, right? That's completely different. So you're going to be able to create and we as a business, right? Anyone that works in HR for healthcare, right? Very important. HR for healthcare practices. You're not the same business as a pizza parlor or a nail salon. Very, very different business, right? So you want to speak to people that are experts within the healthcare vertical, right? And dentistry is one of those. And you want to get that expertise so you can implement that dialogue into your employee handbook. And then that handbook, right, needs to be reviewed by somebody who's trained in employment law, right? Not your CPA, right? I love CPAs. They help you with a lot of additional things, but employment law is not a specialty. Divorce attorneys are not, real estate attorneys are not. You need someone that understands employment law because it's that one item that you could be missing in the handbook that employees looking for work, sometimes they're looking for offices that don't have their HR in order so they can start a lawsuit. Okay, I always breathe after I say that and give it some space because you might feel, oh no, that could never happen. I take calls all the time of stories that would make you cry, of things that happen unexpected, and it doesn't need to be that way, right? So when this company was founded, our CEO is a healthcare employment attorney. And his wife happens to be a pediatric dentist who also owns an orthodontic practice as well. Family members, all in the medical industry and colleagues. And he and his law group, they were going into court or going into mediation and trying to protect some doctors against some of these lawsuits that were showing up. And he didn't understand. He said, why is the marketplace a mess? There is nothing. Why are these lawsuits happening? So he did some research along with a few others in his business, and they decided that they were going to help solve this problem. And that's where HR for Health was born.
Yeah, I love that.
So it's a utility for practitioners in any healthcare vertical to not make it complicated. So the system is in place, and all you have to do is just relinquish yourself to someone else who has your back. And you were talking earlier about another part of when to use. So any one of our customers, right, if you're getting started or if you're an active practice coming to us, any questions, right, you have a human resource team that can answer any one of your questions and coach you on how to handle a problem, can give you the advice that you need on what you need or are required to have in your particular state or community. So that's available. And then since it's a software product, we have training in the software, and then you can also make appointments to have one of our software specialists spend time with you on how to work through some of the different functions in the system. But it's whenever you need it. And that's why our service is available, and it's not something that you just use just once. In order for you to be able to support your practice with a human resource function that is complete. Now, this is just the human resource. Notice I'm not saying anything about payroll.
Yeah.
HR is more important than payroll.
Yes.
Payroll is payroll. All right. So, in the light of talking about human resources, having all of that preparation, all of those wheels and cogs working together, in order for you to do that without using a system like ours, you'd be spending $60 to $80,000 a year on a salaried person who's trained in human resource for business. Right? So, you just think of that amount of money, and that's not your office manager. That's not the practice administrator. So some you might find that have that expertise, but it costs a lot more,
Yeah.
and your business only has so much payroll exposure, right? So depending upon the lifeline of where you are in your practice, HR is important at every level. The only other piece that I want to add, because we talked about purchasing, building out, we talked about, and your own existing practice. You could be in practice for 20 years, and if you thought that it wasn't important to have your HR in order, put it in order, please. Otherwise, we don't want to have your story added to the list
Yeah.
of sad stories. But when you're going to sell, all right, there's a lot of transition conversations that are out in the marketplace. There are real estate companies all over that want to speak to practitioners. Our own CEO speaks nationally about transitioning. What do you need to prepare when you want to transition your practice? It depends on how you want to transition it. Are you selling it? Are you closing it down? Do you want to have a conversation with a group practice? Do you want to have a conversation with a DSO or a corporate entity? Every one of those steps has a little bit of a flavor, but most of it is let's look at your equipment. Is your practice up to date? Do you own the real estate? So many different conversations. And what you want to think about also is that your human resources needs to be in order. So when you sell and retire, none of those issues that could have been incorrect show up on your doorstep as a lawsuit after you retire, because it's a statute of limitations
Uh-huh.
on all of these.
Uh-huh.
So before you buy, if you're acquiring a practice, if you're already in practice for many years or you have multiple locations, every part of it is the right time. And then your exit strategy, even just as important.
That's such a thank you for explaining that. I think that's such an important kind of topic to discuss about every step in your career that you're in, that HR part becomes such an important thing. And like you mentioned something as well. That's the other thing I wanted to ask. For a smaller, for a smaller organizations that have like 3 to 5 to 7 practices, you mentioned something about hiring that individual that is going to handle your HR. What is the benefit of going with somebody, with some individual that is just like handling all your HR, like you internally handling the HR rather than coming in and hiring company like yours? Because like you mentioned something, every state have different laws and different rules and everything else like that. So when you're hiring an individual that is handling all of that, I believe it's going to be a big task. So what is one of the benefit of like even the dentists that have multiple practices in different states? Which way is more beneficial? Is it beneficial to hire one individual to handle all that? Or is it better to go with someone like HR for help? Like which way do you see the trend going?
Well, it's a personal decision,
Uh-huh.
right? You really need to have the inventory and also the budget and the mechanism to be able to have this individual that's in charge of human resources working with multiple locations, et cetera. But many of them want to have an administrative tool that can help them do their job,
I
right?
see.
Because it's not just hiring and terminating,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
There's hiring, there are reviews that need to be done, there are other clinical assignments that need to be taken care of, like OSHA and HIPAA compliance. If we use the word compliance, there are, I think, I think there's 7 categories in dentistry when you
Yes.
think about all the different areas. You have insurance compliance, you have HR compliance, you have OSHA and HIPAA compliance, there's CE compliance,
Yes.
so within the guidelines of all of that, someone that's in charge of this needs a system. And believe it or not, we have customers that have either a regional manager that has some HR experience, but they use HR for health
Wow.
because we can administrate all of their systems into one that they can look at and see all of their independent offices. So it's HR for health is the let me just throw a rhetorical question out there and saying, is HR for health just for the sole practice? No. Can I use HR for health if I have 20 locations? Yes. Can I use HR for health if I'm operating in 7 different states? Yes.
That's amazing.
So depending upon the structure of your business,
Uh-huh.
the system is built to be able to support all of that.
That's amazing. That's 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 an awesome thing because that's what I talk about, automation and technology, using both of those together to be able to put systems in place as a dentist to be able to operate as the business side of dentistry, because that's a topic that we talk about all the time. And I think with Dentment, even like when we discuss, I was like, there is really no platform where you can kind of teach this. When you graduate dental school, nobody talks about these kind of things, and these are the type of thing that has to be talked about and discussed, that hey, there are systems in place already like HR for health and other things that's going to help you operate in that level. Now, just going off a topic, because this is something that came up a lot, and I wanted to kind of ask you as well, because you mentioned something about post COVID. I believe the industry of dentistry has taken a huge hit when it came to staffing. Why do you think that is? Because that's one of those topics that I don't know what the reason behind it. I don't know if people have more options than they did before with all the apps that is out there that you can do that on a DoorDash, Uber Eats, Amazon, this, that. I don't know what it is, but the workforce seems that the interest of wanting to be in dentistry has gone down a lot. So I just wanted to kind of
Yeah.
pick your brain on that and see what is the reason. Like, what are you seeing when you're talking to the dentist? What are you seeing in the marketplace, and what's the cause behind that?
That's an interesting topic to get into because part of my career was in a different side of dentistry. I worked in marketing and advertising. So I spent a lot of time teaching and training at the front desk level. So without making a big deal about the first comment, there's problem that happened with COVID. There are a lot of people that just became so overwhelmed with the disease that they're done. And it could have been the catalyst because they were already at the fringe of their career, overworked, underpaid, not appreciated, all of these emotional things that happen. I mean, if you really think about the way a dental office operates, there's stress. If we think about the psychology, dentists are not on they're not in the top 5 of things to do, right? If someone needs to redo their roof, you fall lower on the list, right? You could have been in the office and gotten a treatment plan for a $7,500 case and you were ready to get it started, but the furnace went, right? So within all of this, there's all the inside communication of like, why aren't these treatment? What are we doing about all of our dormant treatment cases? And we need to make sure that everything's getting into the cash register. There's RCM, revenue cycle management, the whole category of what's happening with insurance. Are we coding things correctly? Are we doing things right to make sure that the flow of accounts receivable is as close to zero as possible? We want to make sure that, because that keeps the business healthy. So it's all of the stress involved in keeping the business healthy. And then the critical catalyst is that I'm working in a job where people don't like my name. I'm a dentist, I'm a hygienist, I'm a dental assistant. They're not looking forward to seeing me, right? At the 95% side, right? If you're like me, I love going to the dentist. I went through my own dental trauma when I was a kid and I got through all of that. So if you want to think about just the mental stress and fatigue of people tearing out of their career because of a major pandemic and never coming back again, that's one thing. So how do you replace all of those people? Right? The hygiene schools around the country, they have limited occupancy. Out here in Pennsylvania, I think we have one of the largest training that I've heard. I mean, they take 42 every year and they're moving them through the system, right? But that's 42 in an area. I'm in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. So this is Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton, and it's growing, right? So the system itself, and then assisting schools, who's doing the teaching? What's the curriculum like? What is the networking like within the area? And if I'm moving 12 students every 3 to 4 months out of this, how can I get them placed, right? Is the office that's willing to take these individuals, right? Can I support them when they come out of school, or am I giving them the wheel behind the sports car and they've never attended an Indy 500 before, right? So there's all of those stresses. And then the dentist, you all know when you get in and you glove up, it's from when you start till when you end. So there's a lot of teaching, there's a lot of leadership that needs to be done. And I'll tell you right now, good leaders, you need to get out there and continue to get fed. Find the dentists that are working and achieving and succeeding, and pay attention and take notes and bring some of that skill home and implement it. But it's all about the leadership involved. People are going to be attracted to those practices. And when we refer back to human resources, if you've got a handbook and a system in place, the employees are going to feel like you know what's going on, right? And that's attractive. That's attractive. I don't know how. I'm not in the subject of what else could have possibly gone wrong and why we can't fill these spaces, but if these spots in different positions, but if you really think about the details in economics, right? If you have a lot of opening, right, that means that there's a lot of other competition, right? So you have less people applying that have skill sets that you're looking for. So how do you match that on the other side, right? I'm not saying that you give away the farm, but you have to have your business in order so then they can get through that and then get into the clinical scenario and see what devices you're using and your talents and my exposure. Can I continue learning while I'm here, or am I stuck the minute I walk through the door? So that might talk about turnover, right? The type of turnover you might be seeing. So if you're seeing a lot of turnover, you may need to step back and take a look at all of the different pieces in the puzzles, from the minute that they're hired to the training that they can get under your tutelage inside the practice. So there's a tricky balance. But
Yeah.
if we could snap our fingers and say, let's produce more hygiene rooms for clinical training to get them into their boards fast enough, and then produce more dental assistants and more talented front desk people. I mean, it's not just AI coming in and taking over the front
Yeah.
desk. You still need to have administrators that know what to do, because people are not looking to talk to a robot. We have the barriers of entry: fear of pain,
Mhm.
fear of embarrassment, and fear of the cost.
Yeah.
This is what keeps people away.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I actually had a conversation with one of my patients today, and she said, "I can see you're very passionate about what you do, but don't take me this the wrong way. I never like going to the dentist." I was like, "You won't be the first, and you won't be the last." I heard it all the time, so I
Right.
completely understand that part
But
of.
you psychologically have to protect your subconscious
Mhm.
from that,
Yep.
because it is constant.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
It's constant. So there's a talking to yourself that has to be done so your armor is strong, because every time, you have a patient in the chair and they flinch and they jump and you're not doing anything to them, it's their brain that's saying, "Oh my God, I felt a cold burst of air. You must be taking a knife to my jaw,"
Yeah.
right? So it's what they can't see. And my daughter just happens to be a dental assistant too, so she shares with me some of the stories. She's like, "We weren't even near the," and the patient like left the chair. And I said, "That's phobia. It's what
There's
she can't see and what that person can't control. And it's not that they don't trust you, it's just this thing is living
Yeah,
It's living.
it
So
is.
you always have to be the one to say, don't worry. You're in a good place. I trust the dentist. Don't worry about a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the mindset for the patients, and I see a lot of trauma in the older patient because those patients will live through the time the dentistry was different. And I heard a lot of that feedback too. It's like those patients back in the days, maybe they didn't use local anesthesia or they didn't do certain things, caused a lot of trauma for those poor patients.
A story, but I won't tell it now. I have a story.
Oh man, that's funny. Well, Mr. Ray, that it's a very fascinating conversation that you brought up, and I want to kind of go back to that because you said something about leadership, and I post a lot about this on my LinkedIn, and that's something that when I was in dental school, I went through life experiences. I got into dental school in like my late 20s. I graduated dental school in my mid 30s, right? So I had a little bit of life experience. I had a little bit of business experience. I did my undergraduate in business. I ran a couple of businesses with my brother before. So I had some business experience when I got out of dental school, and that kind of helped me push me in a direction that I needed to go. And I learned a lot of things quickly. But I see a lot of dentists that graduate dental school. They don't really know a lot about the leadership. And what I really want to know, do you think that kind of also affects the turnover in our industry? Because these dental students that graduate dental school, they don't have a lot of skills in the leadership and they just they're causing kind of like a negative effect when they go through their team. They don't have the right mentors, they don't have the right people in place. So do you think that that also does have a effect of how our industry is as a whole? Do you think that also plays a role in it?
If I may, and I'm not an expert in this particular topic, but I've been around long enough to just know even outside of dentistry, when you look at business successes, and you can even think back to your childhood when you were working a part-time job, what type of a manager or supervisor did you have? What skill sets did they have? What leadership characteristics did they demonstrate? Were they laissez-faire? Were they autocrats? No, were they barking orders, or were they too easygoing that everybody just really didn't do what they needed to do? Right? So it's very important for you as the practitioner. You're a clinician. So the psychology that you understand about biology and the effects of what we were talking about earlier, like the unknowns of patients, you have to know how you are under stress and the unexpected, right? Do you lash out? Are you calm? Are you too calm that it will cause an ulcer over time because you're eating all of your stress and keeping it internally? It's very important for you to understand your personality and then be able to expand your personality so you can adapt to other personalities, right? I'm a very big believer in that. We're all very different people. And like you were saying, doctor, you have business experience, then you decided to go into dentistry. I mean, that's huge. You've got some benefits on the side because you've been out in the street and you've dealt with profiting in a different manner. So adapting to all of that and finding not so much the clinical mentor, because some clinical mentors are only clinical mentors,
Mhm.
right? They're experts in their field and they're fantastic at the school that you went to, et cetera. And the dental schools are looking for more dentists that have great hands and great posture and the psychology behind the physiology and all of that built together to be able to teach the young dentists. But when you're out on your own, when you graduate, now you've got to go find a place to work, whether it's by yourself or you're an associate somewhere. So you want to find good quality leadership books. I highly recommend reading and reading and reading and go back to some of the old foundation stuff, like Napoleon Hill and Dale Carnegie. And even though they might come off as like a sales approach or positive mental attitude PMA books, but these are the foundations of people psychology.
Yeah.
Well, understanding the unknown is exposing yourself to more voices. And definitely don't be a practitioner that doesn't want to go to events, right? I know a lot of dentists that like, oh, I don't want to spend the money going to Vegas, or I don't want to spend the money going to New York or
Uh-huh.
Chicago, or take the team. And all you do is you suffocate growth
Uh-huh.
when you try and not invest in yourself and in your team. So I say all this with as just a humble opinion
No,
of many
absolutely.
of many people that I've talked to through the years. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had the privilege of being able to work with some fascinating personalities and some great dentists over the years. And
Yes.
these are, some of them are still in the industry
Yeah.
that are speaking. And there are some young ones that are coming up that are really engaging in contemporary dialogue that makes a lot of sense for a lot of the younger generation that's graduating
Yeah.
because, it's a different psychology than my age,
It is
you know.
indeed. Absolutely.
Even though I'm very young looking.
Mr. Ray, you are indeed, man. You're still looking young. I don't know why you keep edging yourself.
But if that makes sense from leadership, I mean, it's, find those people. And
Yes.
you know what? You're going to find there are going to be people you just listen to them and you're like, that makes sense. Go up to them. Don't just leave. Don't just sit there and not take notes or let your chat GPT take the notes for you. Take out a pen and write. Listen, watch, write. You absorb a lot more and then find something that person said and go up and ask them why they feel that way about that.
That's amazing. Now, we're talking about events. I know you guys have an event coming up October 23rd through
We
25th.
do.
Yeah, in Utah. What is the one thing I see online is that is your event seems to be a little bit smaller events, is not as spread out, is not as like crazy in a sense. It seems more settled. What is the one thing? Because I always that's a conversation. You just brought something up that kind of the reason I'm asking this question is because I have a lot of conversation with dentists, right? Where they sit down and say, I don't want to go to events. What is the benefit of going to this event? What is this event going to give me that I'm going to lose chair time for it to go to this event? What is that going to teach me, right? So I want to ask is like, what is the mindset? Why is this mindset for the dentist? Like you guys put these events together and you're trying to like educate, you're trying to uplift the dentist, the industry partners, all these people, but the question I have is that do you see more dentists attending these events, or is it more like is the event more for industry partners? And if it is for the dentist, what are really the key takeaway that the dentist, why dentists should attend these events, like for HR, for health events, or any other event, but particularly yours that is coming up? Like, why should dentists attend those? Because that's such an important misconception in our industry that people say, I don't want to attend this event. What am I going to learn? What is the benefit of it? So I really want you to, because you guys are putting this event together and there's a reason why you're putting it together. So I want you to kind of elaborate on that why is important for this dentist to attend these events, to kind of, what are some of the things that they can take away from to attend these events?
Yeah, I'm glad that you're asking. It's an interesting segue of what we were just talking about. The name of the event, it's a leadership summit. So within the guise of leadership, our company is putting together some of the most talented and experienced speakers that are actually achieving inside dentistry. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking that it might be something that you would want to attend, then you're going to leave with information as long as you're in a growth mode. If you want to grow, then this type of an event is for you because it's not clinical, right? There's some touches of clinical reference, but these are people that have built businesses that know how deep the mud can get at times and how to be able to pull yourself out of some sticky situations and turn things around, and there's time in between sessions, so you have the opportunity, like I said earlier, to go up and ask that speaker how they did that and
Uh-huh.
ask that question and get that one-on-one time.
Uh-huh.
And for the vendors that are there that are attending are there because they are skilled and they are relevant to the way operations are happening now in dental offices. So there's nothing stale. This is an event where we're getting hundreds and hundreds of people that are coming It's meant for that single owner
Uh,
that's just looking to grow in that single unit, all the way up to owners that are looking, they have 2 locations, they have goals. They want to expand to 6 locations in 18 months, whatever the dialogue might be. But there are people in that room that can take you from that place to your next goal.
That's amazing. Leadership Summit. I love it, man. I think the name itself says it all. We need more help in dentistry to create leaders, and I think that's what our industry needs. Because the conversation I always have is the more dentists sitting in the driver's seat of any organization, doesn't matter what size it is. Instead of giving our industry to the MBA guys, we need more dentists to be in those driver's seats because it's going to improve patient care. Because you can relate to that dentist, you can relate to how things are. So I think those type of summit is so important, and it's so important for dentists to attend them, because I think leadership is something that is lacking in our industry. I can without a doubt say that there are dentists that are even out for 10 plus years that I talk to, that sometimes they're like, man, I don't know what I'm doing at a time. So I think these are the good conversations. These are the type
Yeah, and
of.
it's business fatigue.
Yes.
There's so much,
Yes.
and they might still be trying to do it all on their own, and they just don't have all of their systems in place. And or there's older dentists that have been in practice for 25 plus years, and it's like, oh my god, if you tell me that if you're going to introduce me to another consultant, I just can't do it. But that isn't true. There are amazing consultants that are out there that get involved with the practices and give them real tools. I think there are many that are very successful out there that just don't come into the office and give you a guidebook and then leave.
Yeah.
They're there. They're there to work with the team and kind of mediate some things. Sometimes they have to jump into the fire, because everybody cares, but everybody's pulling in different directions when we need to be able to pull in that one direction. It's such a team environment.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
You just watch a person come through the front door and then watch them exit, and you need to look at all the different, from the front door to the waiting room to the the front desk, and what's happening there,
Uh-huh.
and then how are we bringing them to the back, and what's the condition of the place that they're going to, whether it's a surgical operatory or a hygiene operatory. There's some very important pieces that happen along the way, because we always have to remember, right? They think that you're trying to get into their wallet and take their money because you're charging too much,
Uh-huh.
right? So there's the value in the science
Yes,
from
absolutely.
the front door until and then you know what? Dentistry is painless, right?
Yeah.
Dentistry is painless, and people will want to be asked. It's like, oh my God, how was your experience? I know you were a little concerned when you came in, Mrs. Smith. So how did everything go? And that's sometimes not the doctor,
Uh-huh.
right? Sometimes that's the assistant. So are your assistants trained to be able to have these
Uh-huh.
conversations? Are they hospitality minded,
Uh-huh.
right? Is your handbook discussing the way that you want your employees to behave
Uh-huh.
with your patients? Right? And if they don't, what bad things are going to happen to them within the law? So, having mechanisms and having systems in place to be able to always be 5 star or as close to 5 star as possible when we're seeing who? Our patients. Because if they have a great experience, they're immediately going to tell people in the first 2 weeks, right? People talk to 20 people and everyone's asking, what's new? So if this is the first time they came to your office and you gave them a great experience when they're online at the movie theater, if people are still going to the movies,
Yeah.
right? Or people are at the grocery store and they say, "Oh, Mary, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
I'm doing great. Oh my God, why are you doing so great? I'm not doing great. I had the best experience at a new dentist. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I need a new dentist. Who
Uh-huh.
are you going?"
Yeah.
In the first 2 weeks,
Yep.
it happens.
Yep. I think the word of mouth is the best marketing for us these days, because the online present marketing to me, the Google ads and all that, it only works so much to a certain extent.
Well, yeah, that's another subject, but
Yeah.
I have recommendations outside of that particular.
Yeah.
There's some new science to what's happening with advertising, because whether you like it or not, you still need to be doing that, because if I mention your name
Mhm.
and I mention your practice name, someone's either going to search for you by your name or by your practice name, and they're going to want to see, that there's no blood and body parts in the
Yeah.
waiting room, right?
Yeah.
All of the tools of death, don't you clean operatories, right? You want the psychology of the individual to be able to go through that clean front door, see an empty waiting room, right? They don't want to see people sitting in there biting their nails, and nice and clean. The staff is all fresh with smiles if you're taking any pictures of them. And if these are videos, right, and you walk them right to that empty operatory, doesn't matter if it's surgical or hygiene, nothing, just an empty chair that's clean with whatever accoutrement is in there, right? Make sure your walls are clean,
Yeah. Yeah.
different things like that. And do not, a lot of times, I remember dentists used to like to display the tray, the sanitized tray, and everything that's come out of the autoclave is
Yeah.
nicely wrapped, it's sanitized, and it's scalpels and needles and the tool. And I used to refer to them as the tools of death. And I would call them on the phone, take that tray, get a new picture, take that picture down. Because consumers don't understand
Yeah.
their necessities. It's not going to be painful, but that's a picture that you don't want to
Yeah, you
have
don't want
there.
to have. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think those are such a amazing advice. Mr. Ray, I have two more questions for you before I let you go.
Okay.
One is, what do you think the future of HR is going to be with the AI? Because the AI has become such a big conversation. I want to know how you guys are using the AI to kind of implement certain system in your product, or
Yeah.
is it helping you guys? What is that going to looking like in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, well, we use some AI inside the system for very basic questions. So, interestingly enough, when you're working with our system, your business is understood based on where you're operating, right? So, you can ask some quick questions, anything in depth, you'll even get a response back from the device that you need to talk with someone on the team. So we're not allowing AI because it's still too young. There's a lot of learning that it needs, but general questions we can give immediate responses to, especially when it has something to do within the software. Like, I have an employee that's displaying this particular behavior. Should I send them home? How should I write them up? Should I do a performance review or a performance violation? We can give a suggestion based on that. But if the vocabulary gets complicated, um, and the device can hear stress in your voice based upon the types of wording or the phrasing in the sentences, we want them to talk and get coaching, because the robotic tool is not going to give all of the advice,
I see.
taking away the human interaction. And we see that down the road. We see that down the road. It's AI is not going to completely replace the function of attorneys reviewing the practices that you're using, because the bottom line is this. If there's a possibility that an employee could feel that they weren't paid correctly, that they're not being appreciated, or any of those negative characteristics that make people feel that they can't put out 100 or 110 or 150% because of something inside, those items need to be dealt with from a leadership standpoint
Right.
through the handbook, and then constant reinforcement, either positive or negative, right? So the body still needs to have that one-on-one interaction. So the dentist, I'll use you.
Mhm.
You need to make sure that you're talking to your employees and appreciating them for the skills that they bring forward, and always reminding them that this business, we're going to help you get stronger at areas that you're weak. right? So if your practice management software has this huge update and it's a learning curve, and then you as the leader needs to be able to understand that I've got to get my people instruction so their learning curve is shorter. Because if the learning curve is shorter, it takes less away from productive time, right? You're going to have more productive time to spend time, because everything about a dental office is spending time with your patients,
Absolutely.
right? And everything else has to be just rudimentary in a
Absolutely.
sense.
Yeah.
So I don't see 5 years down the road.
Oh,
I don't know if I have a crystal ball that's strong enough, because this was like it was in the late 90s when everyone was talking about this thing called the internet.
yeah.
All we had was Netscape email at the time, right? And oh my God, the internet. Oh my God, Y2K. It's the
Yeah.
world's all the bridges are gonna fall into the water. Everything's gonna go wrong.
Yeah. That's
And
interesting.
nothing happened.
Yep. We're
We're
still
still
here.
here. We're still here.
We're still here. Mr. Ray, I'm so glad the one thing that coming to Daikema and meeting you and just us meeting, I truly appreciate how open you are to conversations. And I learned so much just talking about you. Even last time we got on the call and we discussed dentment, and then now we us having a conversation of I just can truly see the passion that you have for what you do. I'm always super appreciative for individuals that are passionate about what they're doing, because I think that's where you're able to make majority of the impact when you're passionate for what you're doing and you're not just doing it just to do it. So I want to thank you for that. And also I want to thank you for giving me your time tonight. I know it's kind of late, your hours in the East
It's
Coast.
okay.
I am super grateful for your time. I'm definitely
I'm
gonna,
happy.
yeah, I'm definitely gonna make my, definitely gonna force myself, or at least make the best effort to attend you guys' leadership summit, because I think it's such an important thing. And I hope to meet you over
Well,
there.
I'll be there.
Yeah, I know. And I want to
I'll be
come
there.
there. Yep, I want to come there where, I think that from the last time where you saw where Dentment was, I just show you just like a small thing. I think this time if I show it to you, you're gonna be like, wow, this is like we took it to the next level. So you're probably gonna even like it more.
I'm hoping. I mean, what you're doing for the community is huge,
Thank you. I appreciate it.
because you're offering practitioners an opportunity to get different information, right? And just so everybody understands, even though I represent a company currently, I just want you to know that you're in the best profession that you possibly can be,
Absolutely.
because you can own your own business. And if you've always wanted to be a doctor and you chose this specialty, be proud of that. But it doesn't stop there.
Yes.
Be very cautious about arriving,
Hmm.
because you haven't arrived. You're still not going to arrive when it's time to transition out. Be when you're thinking of just entering a different role in the industry, to be a teacher, to lend your experience to others and try and help them walk through the minefield. So that's why we all do this. We all want to share and educate, because we don't want you stepping on these landmines, because
Absolutely.
it's messy.
Yes. Yes.
It's painful, it's messy,
Yes.
and I applaud you for stepping outside the box and creating a different learning mechanism or community for
Yeah.
people to just get together and make each other stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the conversation that I have always is like, how can we empower the next generation of the dentists, the dental student, the pre-dental students, and even the dentists that are out there? How can we do it? And that's why I was like building something like LinkedIn, having the mentors, having this everyone in a place where you can kind of feel safe and feel
Uh,
like you're not being judged by the outside voices. I think it's so important for our industry. And that's why like I wanted to build Dentment, just to kind of provide a safe haven for it. Because like I said, I talk about this all the time. When I graduated dental school, I felt so lost. I just didn't know what I was doing, to be honest with you. That transition was very hard. So just having some system in place to help these people transition smoother and educate them on what's the other side looking like, by having a mentor, by having people like yourself to talk to, and all these things. I think it's such a powerful tool to be able to have. But Mr. Ray, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm not going to take any more of your time. I hope to
that's
see
quite all
you.
right.
Yes, sir.
I
I hope to
enjoyed
see
being
you.
here. Thank you for
Yes,
having me.
absolutely. I'm so grateful for your time. And I look forward to seeing you in Utah October 23rd.
I'll be there. We'll spend some time together. I'll
Sure.
introduce you to a few more people that I think would be an awesome addition.
For sure. Yeah, well, absolutely. Like I said, I'm looking forward to bringing, Dentment out because I think we're more ready with the features that we added and everything else. I think it's in the next phase of things and it's just going to continue growing. But I'm excited to come out, show it to some people and see, we'll get some feedback, get some more feedback, take it, implement it, make it better. And hopefully, we can bring people on and have them enjoy it, and that's really ultimately the goal. But I look forward to
Exactly.
seeing you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll see you there.
Yes, sir. Bye bye.
Good night, everyone.